What's that? You're going to be helming your own pro wrestling project? Your creative vision is finally going to be executed? This is the biggest responsibility you've ever been entrusted with. Now what? I'm Mike Quackenbush. This is Till We Make It. And if you're passionate about professional wrestling and you're never done learning all about it, then I know you're in the right place. There are hundreds of videos on this very channel just for you. And there's even more of the educational multimedia I make for people in professional wrestling over on my Patreon, a link to which is down below. So, you've been entrusted with a huge responsibility. You've got to organize and execute an angle involving 3 tag teams, which will culminate in a big triple threat tag team match on the very next tentpole event. Or maybe it's been entrusted to you to put together an entire tournament of professional wrestling and pitch that finished product to the people in charge. Or maybe you're launching your own federation and you're in the process of putting together your very first live event. Well, whatever this huge responsibility might be, I want to offer you some insight so that this process seems far less daunting. If this is your first time producing a live event, booking a tournament, writing an angle, well, this is a huge step forward in your career, right? But I also appreciate the enormity of the task might hit like a ton of bricks. It may seem like a towering challenge that's almost too big to mount. Well, if you feel that way, I want to remind you of this analogy. Can you think of a cartoon you might have seen where a bunch of smaller people stack up on top of each other and then put on a trench coat and a hat in order to pass for a much taller human being? That's what this task is. At first blush, it appears to be towering. But once you look beneath the surface, once you open the trench coat up, so to speak, what you're going to realize is that this big task is made up of several smaller components. And when you look at them in that way, it becomes far more manageable. So when you're first entrusted with the responsibility of writing an angle with 3 tag teams in it that will culminate at a big tentpole event in a triple threat tag team match, yeah, that sounds like a pretty big responsibility. But you need to start to break it down into its smaller components. Is this going to be a 3-beat story, a 5-beat story, a 9-beat story? Can you outline exactly what you need? What other media will you need to capture? Are there extra vignettes, promos, or some other type of multimedia that has to be created in order to support the story that you're writing? That's a component to consider. Is there a fixed budget for this, or will you be required to bootstrap it all together? That's a separate component you've got to consider. Is the talent available when you want to shoot any additional material? Those logistics are a separate component that you have to consider. And what about the tech side? Who's going to run lights, camera, and audio for these shoots? That too is a smaller component of this larger project that you've got to consider. But just start breaking those things down into their individual components so the task itself doesn't seem so toweringly impossible. Is all of this starting to sound like more than you might be able to handle alone? Well, if so, start assembling a team around you and be prepared to delegate out any of those smaller components that do not fit within your wheelhouse. You might be very adept at outlining or storyboarding, but maybe you've got no knack for wrangling talent to a promo shoot. If so, find someone and add them to your team so they can solve that part of the equation. Well, let's put that aside and talk about a totally different example. Let's say you are launching your very own wrestling promotion and you are about to produce your very first live event. That seems like a monumental undertaking. Can we break that down into smaller components? Considering how gigantic a responsibility it is to produce a live card of professional wrestling, we better break this up into smaller components. Like, who's handling all of the rentals? Who's renting the venue? Renting the ring, or renting any of the production equipment that you might need, like a sound system, light trees, or cameras. That's a smaller component. What about talent relations? Who's handling the booking of the talent and the payment of any deposits you might need so that talent holds your date? That's a smaller component. And then there's bureaucracy, like the licensing and insurance pertinent to your event. That is a component in and of itself. So too is travel logistics, like all the flights and hotels and other things related to transit to and from the event that need to be handled. That's a smaller component. Then there's the promotional materials. Who's writing the copy, designing the advertisements, getting the posters printed? The promotional materials are a smaller component. And then there's the creative end. What's the vision for this card? Who's going to actually write it? That too is a smaller component. If all of this is starting to sound like more than you can handle alone, then get ready to assemble a team around you and delegate out any of the tasks that do not fall firmly within your wheelhouse. You might have the right personality to handle talent relations, but maybe you've got no knack for marketing. Well, if that's true, add somebody to your team who can competently handle that part of the equation for you. No matter the task, remember this, my friend. All large projects can be broken up into smaller components. So let's say that you are about to launch your own pro wrestling promotion and you are planning your very first live event. Well, it's important to make sure you get the where and the when right. And to fill your brain with knowledge on that topic, click this video up here. It is about precisely that. If licensing and permature in wrestling are new to you, click on this video down here to learn more. And if you haven't yet become a member of the Till We Make It tribe, subscribe.